Prepare for trouble and make it double. Because I got a treat for y'all, and trust me when I say this, you guys are going to love this story the same way I did when I first found it. Because dear fucking god, I don't know what the author was smoking, because this story is peak fiction in my own opinion, and it's currently the best Bleach x Naruto fanfic I have ever read. Anyway, before I start this video, I'd like to say thank you for returning to VoiceVerse Productions, and if you are a newcomer, may I recommend that you subscribe, like and hit the bell icon to never miss an upload. This story is a revamp of HNC, a story following the path of Naruto as he rises in the Hollow World. How would our knuckle-headed blonde progress? If you guys are curious how this will transpire, then I suggest that you sit back, relax and get ready to experience Hollow's Never Cry by PlaguedAmbition. Let's go. Chapter 1, The Door on Your Left. Disclaimer, I own neither Naruto nor Bleach. Madara and Kagaya were defeated long ago, but our blonde hero's work was far from over. It was funny in a way, the village he fought so hard for had all but made him an outcast. Of course they made sure he had nearly run out of use beforehand. Apparently the fact that he was a Jinchuriki made him a danger to those around him, in this supposed time of peace. Naruto knew the truth though, this peace was just the nations aiming and sharpening their blade before they struck. He had failed, admitting that left him with a hollow stinging feeling in his chest. His master's dream, his dream, hell even Nagato's dream. He could not accomplish it. The world did not come to understanding. They did not know peace, and suffering was still happening throughout the land. The lights were dimmed in his cabin on the outskirts of the village. A bottle of alcohol hung limply from his fingertips. Around him were piles of crumpled paper and cigarette butts. The once bubbly blonde had entered a stage of depression. The saddest thing really was that no one even knew. Hardly anyone came to check on him, mostly from fear of being branded as deserters or being exiled before of contamination. Yes, it had become a thing. Jinchuriki, the ultimate weapons, were apparently biohazardous, at least that is what the science division was saying. How much of that was truth though? Well, nothing seemed to change around Naruto. The animals were still fine, the plants still growing. It was a ploy. They shunned their big weapon, to hide the fact that they were busy making smaller ones. Each of the other villagers all quickly jumped on the wagon as well. He had to be slightly thankful to the Akatsuki though, because of their actions no one considered Gaara a Jinchuriki anymore. His friend would be able to live without their tarnished title. Hell, even B had made a run for it when he saw how things were going. Naruto's thoughts often drifted to what life would have been like if he accepted the offer. Uzumaki Naruto was now an obsolete weapon. He pushed back the voice that was screaming at him from inside his head. Kurama, the two had been partners since his birth. They both knew what it was like to be hated and both of them despised the feeling. Naruto gave a small chuckle as he finished moving some seals into position, extinguishing the cigarette in his mouth and taking a large gulp from the bottle in his hand before tossing it against the wall. The long blonde-haired shinobi took his position in a large seal formula and took a deep breath, slowly bringing his hands up into the ram position. He put his right foot in front of his left and started to channel as much chakra as he could. The symbols around him lighting up, and almost breathless, Kai, came from his mouth as the room around him exploded in chakra, sending dust and debris into the air, obscuring vision of what had occurred. It took but a few moments for the large form of an orange fox stood upright and roared, his tails flicking out to the side and clearing away the dust. Kurama was free. Slowly he turned his head to the ground and saw what had become of his partner. The blonde slowly raised his fist up into the air and gave a bright smile. Kurama slowly lowered his own and bumped it against the much smaller one. I want you to live free, friend. I want you to be all you can be, Kurama. Naruto felt his strength quickly leaving him. He could faintly hear his friend yelling at him. What he was saying he couldn't make out though. Be happy, Kurama. Don't become like me. Naruto was surrounded by a blinding white light as his body slowly rose from the ground. His eyes blinked rapidly to try to clear his vision and see what was around him. I mean you no harm, Naruto-san. He stretched his senses out, a vain attempt to find where the voice was coming from. The air next to him shifted and his body weight shifted away from that direction so that he could react faster. It'll be a long time before I believe some crap like that. A pair of pale hands slowly reached out and cupped his cheeks. Behind them were slender arms leading into a similar body, pale face framed by silver hair that cascaded down her shoulders and stopped just above her thighs. Someone who isn't afraid to be near me. I guess we aren't in the elemental lands anymore. His eyes took in the bright surroundings, though there was nothing else around him apart from her. Never mind that, what's going on? Who the hell are you? She slowly took her hand away from Naruto's cheek and frowned. I am the kami that governs Rebirth, and currently you are dead, Naruto-san. She trailed off with a sad look on her eyes. I had not wished to see you here for some time. Naruto felt his body fall maybe a foot before he landed on his feet, slightly crouched down before dusting himself off and standing at his full height of 6 feet 1. He sized up the person before him and gave a small bow of his head. So I died, eh? Naruto rolled his head around on his shoulders. What about Kurama? Was he able to get out okay? The frown quickly turned into a bright smile. Why yes, actually, he and his kin have returned to their home dimension. He tried his best to save you, but in the end it wasn't enough. Her frown had returned and she looked rather confused for a few moments. Kurama was adamant that I tell you never to give up. That things might not be as far-fetched as you think. Naruto shifted his body weight to one leg and gave a small scoff. What's the point though? The war was over yet people still couldn't understand one another. We had all suffered yet they still wanted to make others suffer more. I am just glad Kurama is able to live his life freely again in the end. If you see them again, can you tell them I say hey? Naruto gave a weak smile as he remembered how the world had become. I came here to offer you another chance at life actually, Kami suggested sheepishly, watching as Naruto rose a brow in her direction. I believe this may have been what Kurama was talking about. Why? Naruto's question caused confusion on the deity's face, thus he decided to elaborate. Why would you think that I want a second chance? Kami took a handful of careful steps forward before placing a hand over Naruto's heart. Because of your heart. You are a good person, Naruto-san. You did not deserve what happened in your previous life. You did all you could, even going further than what we had thought you possible of, yet you still pushed and pushed, trying everything you could. In the end you made a selfless sacrifice for your friend. You may have soured over the duration of your time in isolation, but it is only dust that covers your heart, something that is easily enough wiped away. We convened and decided that you deserve a second chance, one where you can be happy. Naruto let out a yawn as he picked at his ear lazily. He came a tight inhale through his nose before blinking a few times at the goddess in front of him. Yeah, okay. So what do you really want? Pardon? She questioned in shock. The blonde shinobi let out a tired sigh, offering someone a second chance at life. Yeah, that only happens in stories, so what do you want me to do? I am a shinobi, I'm used to being used so I can see when someone is trying to do it. Honestly, it is tiring how people try to hide it between nice words, so chuck em out and tell me what it is that you want. Kami gave a small chuckle. How very perceptive. Yes, I feel war is coming to one of the dimensions that we observe. A war not too different from the one you fought at, and I feel you and another could play a pivotal role. Much like you did in the one prior. War. Is that all humans are good at? Why can't anyone just sit down and talk, discard religion and beliefs and speak as one person to another? A scoff left Naruto's mouth as he sat down, a bored look on his face. Why, you do realize you are speaking to a god right now, right? The goddess stuttered out in shock. Naruto craned his neck to the side. Sorry, but what have you lot ever done for humanity? After a few moments of not getting a response he stood up. Whatever, you want to chuck a monster at a war and hope it goes away. Fine, Kurama would have my head if I rejected it anyway. So you're accepting, right? The goddess questioned hesitantly. She stiffened slightly as Naruto's eyes snapped at her. He was far from his peak currently. Though when he was in his prime he and his friend were able to fight Kagaya and win. Now Kagaya was an actual goddess. The process behind becoming such was really murky, but she fit the bill. If she was ever unsealed for a decent period of time to create some kind of change in the world, then the court would likely drag her up. In saying that, Kagaya was stronger than the goddess of Rebirth, at least in terms of fighting power. They had watched Naruto's skills dull over his years away, but his mind had sharpened to incredible levels. She did not know what to expect. That is why when he gave a small nod at her she let out a breath and was able to quell the shaking in her knees that she had not noticed before. Thank you for accepting, Naruto-san. When you're ready please leave through the golden door to your left. Naruto stood up again and stretched himself out, a small groan coming from his mouth as he rubbed at the stubble on his face. So, I guess you're going to take my memories or something. A pained smile crossed her face. Of course, you will come to forget this meeting in time, though you will feel a drive towards certain actions. Also your memories of your time as a shinobi, nearly all of them will vanish. I am sorry, but it is part of Rebirth. Ah sure. Naruto stuffed his hands into his pockets and walked over towards the door in question, or should he say doors. He pursed his lips in thought. Why were there two? Why were they both gold? Why did they have strange masks hanging above them that looked like clown faces? Such questions he didn't voice. Not being the most avid fan of clowns, Naruto naturally picked a sad clown mask. The goddess of Rebirth was relieved. She only had one chance to offer him this. Susanoo wanted the boy to join them in the court, and if he trained himself back to his peak he could be classed as a minor god of war, so he was qualified enough. When she heard the doors open she turned and lifted her hand to wave, only for horror to overtake her features. She had forgotten that two doors lead to that dimension. Moreover, both looked very similar. He gave a faint wave back to her as she started to run across the room, the doors snapping tightly shut just as she reached them, her form sliding down as she heard the room work its magic. I turned him into a hollow. Well, moreover he turned himself into one, but wasn't it my lack of guidance that brought about this outcome? Her face quickly found home inside the palms of her hands. This was not according to plan. He was meant to become a Shinigami. Hell, he should have been drawn to the Shinigami room. Why did he enter the hollow one? Actually, why the hell did they both look so freaking similar? Gold and sandstone should not be placed right next to one another. Swallowing deeply, she traced her finger on the ground in the form of a circle, the sands of Hugo Mundo coming into view beneath her. Sprawled out on the sands was a yellow fox, 9 long tails resting behind it, while blue-black tribal marks had formed around the base of his paws. A fox skull taking shape over the top of his regular one. She could already hear the other gods screaming her name. This was her chance to prove that she was able to do her job and didn't need someone watching her over her shoulder constantly. Amaterasu is going to kill me. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, unaware of his observation as he struggled to get to his feet. For some reason he just couldn't move like he normally did. It was then that something yellow drifted into the corner of his vision and quickly caught his attention. He snapped his head around to get a better look and found that it seemed to be attached to himself, a tail. He did a double take as he noticed another come into his vision, followed by another and another. In the end, Naruto ended up giving a chuckle. 9 tails. Seems like I get to experience Haku. Damn, I feel like I knew who I was talking about, but now, was it a fox? The blonde slowly moved his head to face where his hands should be, only to find paws. I'm a fox. He yelled, quickly managing to stand up and run forward a few steps before noticing he was finding moving easier already. Maybe instincts were starting to kick in. Oh, I really fucked up this time, nearly as bad that time I let Jesus become a vampire, the goddess of rebirth stated as she watched a group of hollows start to crowd around Naruto, already knowing what was about to happen. This feels incredibly familiar. Have I been like this before, or was I actually always like this? Naruto mused inwardly before hearing a soft crunch against the sands around him. I guess my yelling alerted them, who knows, maybe they are not hostile. Naruto took notice of a large purple humanoid-looking creature. A bone mask of sorts covering its face. Get the fox, boys. It roared, causing the blonde fox to sigh before quickly leaping to the side, dodging the large fist of another strange-looking creature. His eyes quickly darted around and took in those around him. It appeared as though they had moved the larger ones to the front of the group. Was it perhaps an intimidation tactic? They tried to rush him. Naruto took a small step to the side, his tails reacting and reaching up to grasp at one that came too close. The bone tips digging in and ripping at the flesh of the arm before they quickly twirled, ripping right down to the bone like a grisly drill. The tails quickly spun together before impaling another. He had figured that it would be more difficult to control them, though it didn't really seem to be much more than an extension, like having an extra finger. Of course, these fingers were long and sharp. Naruto felt a change in the air around him. It started to move in a single direction, towards one of the creatures in the back, a red orb forming in front of its mouth. His eyes narrowed dangerously. A Bijudama. No, it felt much too weak for it to be one. Even still, he stepped out of the way, feeling the energy rush past him in the shape of a beam. Well, if we are playing like that. Naruto reared his head back and felt a large amount of strange energy form in front of his mouth. It was like chakra that wasn't quite chakra. He lowered his head. He was forming a Bijudama, at least that is what it felt like. He felt a pull in his mind though. As he was about to release the technique, his thoughts changed. No longer did he want to call it a Bijudama. No, instead he wanted to call it a Cero. A blue-black beam came from the blonde's maw and quickly took care of the creature in front of him and the majority of the group that had been standing too close to his target. One was left, and Naruto had started to channel more of that strange energy to perform another one of those Zero things, only for it to turn and run. He watched as the brown goat with a small tuft of green hair atop of its head ran getting further and further away. Naruto sagged as his body dropped down to the ground. Not what I was expecting. His stomach grumbled and he found his mind hit with a surge of pain. Damn, I'm hungry, could really go for some ramen right now. I have no clue what ramen is, but there is none of it here. Naruto narrowed his gaze in front of him where the voice had come from. He could feel that not chakra swirling around him, getting ready to be used in another attack as a long slender creature erupted from the ground. Don't attack, don't attack. I don't want to fight. Naruto gave a small huff. Why did he always attract the strange ones? So, are you going to do something or just sit there creepily bobbing up and down? I was waiting for you to ask what there is to eat if there isn't any ramen. The worm thing gave what appeared to be a sigh. Truth is we eat each other. I know how nasty, but it helps keep us, well us. Along with filling up the hunger and constantly testing how battle ready we are. Honestly, it is such a brutish way to live. One of Naruto's tails moved forward to point at the worm. So I could eat you. Well yes, but then you wouldn't have my wonderful voice to listen to. Hey, no, stop charging up a Zero. I was kidding. I know a fair bit about these lands. Though to others my fair bit is quite a lot, and I am willing to impart this knowledge onto you under the condition that you feed me. And how do I know that you won't just feed me false information? The worm stopped its movement, seemingly shocked. Well now, that is an interesting question. Many just assume that I will only tell them the truth. I will be frank with you then, I am not overly strong, at least not on the level of yourself. That being said, you are just one of many here in these lands. It is pure luck that we would cross paths like this. Well, that is a bit of a lie. Those hollows were hunting me under the orders of their king. Hollows. Naruto rolled the word out of his mouth, testing it. What do you mean by that? We, my fine fox, are hollows. It is the name of our race. Forget what you were before, it does not matter here. Here everyone is hollow. Prey or predator remains to be seen though. My name, I will give it to you, for as I said, you asked an interesting question, Sayelaporo Grands. May I kindly have yours? Uzumaki Naruto, family name first, Naruto replied, his eyes staying trained on the worm. Ah, here people introduce themselves with their family name second, well, at least those that can remember it. Riga. Your name is too long, Naruto interrupted. Sayel, that is what I will call you, or worm. Sayelaporo started bouncing once again. That is fine. Sayel, that is, I would prefer not to be called worm. I am much smarter than one after all. Then don't call me fox, Naruto grumbled out. One of Naruto's tails moved and pointed towards the downed hollows. So we eat these hollows, right? The worm nodded his head. Yes, that way we can retain our thought and our memories. Otherwise we could regress back into a Jillian. Jillian, I assume that is some kind of hollow. Sayel craned his body and head a little to the side. Yes, it is a large bulky form where our minds fight to gain control. Once we gain control and gather enough Reiruko, we shrink down and contain it in these much smaller bodies. As we are referred to as a Justice. I caught a glimpse of a very strange looking hollow. It was a skeleton and some were even calling him a king. I think that it might be the rumored Vasto Lord, though I cannot say for certain. Sounds lame, Naruto drawled out, one of his tails stabbing out and impaling one of the nearby hollows. His strong tail dragged the burnt body over to him, his tail slashing through the flesh rather easily before he lifted a piece up and placed it onto the tip of his tongue. He snapped his mouth shut and watched Sayel. You really are a weary one, aren't you? Here, if you will allow me. Sayel moved to one of the hollows before taking a large bite and swallowing, opening up his mouth to show it was empty. See, no harm. Needless to say, the hollow that Naruto had dragged over to himself did not last much longer than a minute after that. A small burp escaped the fox and he grumbled at the unwanted action before resting his head atop his paws, thinking about what was happening as he watched the worm continue to nibble away at his hollow. How much of that fight from earlier did you see? Sayel stopped his eating and turned to face Naruto. All of it, of course. They were hunting me when they ran into you. I was not really sure you would be able to handle it, but you proved me wrong. That goat, this energy that is around us shifted around her just before my Zero. That was it, right? Naruto mused to himself before giving a small nod to confirm his thoughts were right. Well, it shifted, she was the only one to walk away. The energy in the air. Shinigami call it Ryoshi. Reiruko is what we contain, Ryoshi is what the air contains, and Ryutsu is what happens when both of them meet without control. To not restrain them, do you understand? I'm not an idiot, Naruto growled out, I just don't know what I don't know. Sayel gave a blank look towards Naruto for a few moments. That is surprisingly insightful. Very well, I cannot really feel the energy in the air around us. Maybe that is something of a special skill of yours. Special skill. Naruto mused, his ears twitching as a faint wind brushed over their tips. Maybe. I don't know. There is something in the wind, but I can't feel it really strongly. So you aren't really sure? Naruto let out a small snarl. I don't know. I feel like I used to be able to do it much better, but I can't say for sure. Anyway, the goat, let's get back on track. It survived when nothing else did, but a cretin that was under the sands. Oh, we have moved on to snide remarks now. It is still better than being a worm. As a show of good faith though, I am a parasite. I am able to infest a dead or dying body and have it go through something akin to pregnancy with me as the child, Sayel explained in an effort to earn some trust from the fox. I could have done without the image. Naruto did his best to push it away, though it lingered for a time. Now focus, why did the goat live? If I am to fight, I need to make sure that when I attack people get hit. Sayel paused. Nelil Tuodelschwank is the name of that goat. From what I can gather, it appears that she is able to absorb Ryoshi-based attacks like the Zero and launch them back. She may have diverted your attack so that it missed her. I presume that it has a limit, though she is not one that you need to worry about. Barely a hollow if I'm to be honest, much too nice, completely different from yourself, my great fluffy lord. If I didn't have the sneaking suspicion that you would just get one of these corpses pregnant, I would be rather inclined to kill you for that. Well now, isn't that good news for me? Naruto stood up and stretched his body out, feeling his bones creak back into place, small pops of gas escaping from the joints. There is a cave, not overly far from here. Sayel looked at him in confusion before following his gaze. I don't see one. Neither, I feel it. And you said I am creepy. Pregnant corpses, I don't want to see that, much less experience one giving birth. Editor Audios, preach Naruto, preach. I said it was akin to pregnancy, there is a difference. Naruto let out a huff as his padded feet slapped against the sand, his destination already in place, you're becoming akin to a headache. Chapter 2, Tempsters. Her green tufts of hair flickered in the gentle breeze that swept across Huko Mundo. Her head bowed in respect to the near-humanoid goat in front of her. Her father, Lord 2. He ruled over the east of Huko Mundo. Though his army may be smaller than those in the south and the west, he used his cunning mind to more than make up for it. Now the trio stood on somewhat equal ground, none of them trying to push out into the territory of the others. This had given them balance. What he was hearing now though was not news he wanted to know about. His daughter had failed in apprehending Sayeloporo. That damned parasite knew what his plans for the future were. With all the prep work he had in place, changing his plans now would take too long. The worst of it though was that her hunting party had been wiped out by a single hollow. A hollow strong enough to fight against a number of Ajachis at once was not something he wanted slipping away from him. Take a larger force, you have all the time you need Nelil, but bring me the fox and Sayeloporo's head. I will not accept failure a second time, even from you. Nelil bowed her head a little lower, as much as can be spared. We will run them down and bring them back so you can savor ripping his head yourself, father. 2 stood up from his throne and walked down the small set of stairs in front of him. Stopping before Nelil and gently brushing her hair before roughly grabbing her cheeks. Don't come back if you fail. There will be no home here for you. Her ears heard the sound of his hooves clack away from her. She did not raise her head, instead still looking at the ground her father had just occupied. I understand. Naruto's paws hit the sandy ground of Huko Mundo. His gaze, every now and again, drifted over to his wormy companion. If one could call him such at this point. More or less they were both merely using one another. Sayel seemed to be a decent source of information for Naruto, while the fox protected the worm, often leaving scraps for it to eat. It had been a few days since they last ate though. The cave that Naruto had been planning on retreating to had been filled with hollows on the verge of regression. They offered very little and Naruto could hear breathing on his neck. There was something looming over him. Its claws slowly digging into his flesh. It was painful, his skull aching while his stomach churned. He turned to look at Sayel again. He could quickly kill this creature, he knew that. Though there were still things that Naruto did not know, things that Sayel was willing to tell him. He grit his teeth, taking a deep breath in as he scanned the area around them. His claws extended outwards and ran into the sand, clenching up stiffly as his breathing became a little heavier. Hungy. Sayel froze where he was, slowly turning to look at the blonde fox behind him. Those icy eyes were looking straight at him. Now Naruto, we both know that I am not nearly enough for one like yourself. If you can hold out just a little longer. I do remember that there was something akin to a den around here. Last time I counted 4 or 5 that were inside. Their Ryutsu was somewhat high, higher than mine at least, not so much yours. The way those tails seemed to sway from side to side did not instill a vote of confidence in the worm. Rather they just fueled the motion that he was trapped with a hungry predator at the current second. Sayel could see the blue eyes. Over the past few hours they had slowly been turning golden in color. The scientist inside of him, along with the information that he had gathered, caused him to dub this state of Naruto as semi-rational. He still seemed to remember that they had loosely agreed to having Naruto not kill him so long as Sayel continued to feed him information. You know, our back and forth kind of dies if only one of us is speaking, Sayel prompted, hoping for a response. He of course got one, though not the one he was expecting as he saw Naruto's tongue brush along his black lips. Now, really I am not enough to sate your Hanjuve. A large tail knocked him from his feet and off to the side as a Sero flew past where Sayel had been standing and headed straight towards Naruto. Naruto's tails quickly wrapped together and blocked the Sero. Sayel looked on with wide eyes. Did Naruto retain enough of his mind at this moment to protect him? As the blast died down, the tails unwrapped, smoke slowly wafting from him but otherwise unharmed. Sayel looked at the hollows that were coming over the sandy dune. Their Ryutsu was pretty strong. Naruto's on the other hand was flying all over the place. 6 Ajachis hollows had crested the dune, the 7th having been standing on the top for a few seconds now. Well look here boys, seems like we have someone regressing. The lead hyena type Ajachis got out between faint snickers. Not even the worm there will give us a decent meal. This was a total waste of freaking time. A large gorilla roared out before flaring his nostrils in a snort. Sayel kept his retort about being a parasite not a worm concealed. The Ajachis seemed to ignore the fact that a regressing Naruto blocked their Sero without any real damage. They were greatly underestimating a hungry beast, one that had seemingly decided that it was going to quell its hunger with their bodies. There was a small cackle before the hyena pointed forward. You lot deal with the fox quickly. That worm, he was the one that sold us out last time. I would never forget your sense fella. You're mine Keke. My god you're actually retarded, Sayel droned out. His body slithering back as the hyena jumped towards him. Sayel quickly dove deep down into the sands. Sorry Naruto, but fighting really is not my strong point. Naruto though did not even notice his companion leave. His vision clouded slightly, becoming blurred though he could make out the big shape coming towards him. Despite his pounding head he was able to command his tails to fly out and stab into the gorilla, though he didn't feel the tips pierce through its skin. They bounced, causing Naruto to quickly come to the conclusion that his tails were parried. He grit his teeth and lowered his head a little before whipping his tails around like a helicopter. His tails found their targets and wrapped around the limbs before ripping two of the lower-level Dojutsus in half. The tails dragged the bodies over to Naruto as blood spilled down, covering his body and dripping into his mouth, pushing back the creeping darkness in his mind. He drew one of the halves down and roughly ripped out a chunk before quickly chewing and swallowing. I feel so much better now. Naruto firmly planted his feet on the ground, his mouth opening for a split second, which was all the time it took for a Zero to fly out. Not overly powerful, but this was more used for its ability to be used quickly. It caught another Dojutsus off guard, smacking them into the sand and glassing the area around him. He met the gaze of the gorilla, his tails gently swaying from side to side, looming high overhead and ready to strike down in attack once more. I'm gonna crush ya runt. The gorilla struck his chest with one arm, the other digging into the sand at his feet and throwing it up into the air before he danced on the spot, grunts and calls slipping from his mouth. It all came to a sudden stop though as he glared at Naruto, a deep growl slipping from him as his nostrils flared. His knuckles struck the ground as he quickly took towards the blonde. Naruto's mind quickly raced. When the gorilla had thrown the sand he had seen the small mark his tails had left. This thing had tough skin, perhaps if he went for the joints he could break through. He pondered the thought. It was decent, though the gorilla probably had this used against him quite often. This meant Naruto would need to find a way to open up any guard that might be used. He found it. Of course these thoughts happened in the amount of time it would take one to blink. Of course the gorilla moved at such a rapid pace as well. This meant that by the time Naruto put his plan in motion he only had enough time for one chance. Hopefully it would be all he needed. Naruto slapped his tails on the sand in front of him, causing displacement of a large amount. The displaced sand quickly rose into the sky, creating a blanket of sorts that hid Naruto from view. His senses stretched, faintly feeling where the gorilla was as it had stopped. A tail shot out from one side and he felt it turn to defend. His 8 others shot out towards his back and made impact under his arms and behind his knees. He cracked the skin, though it wasn't very deep. His senses flared and he jumped to the side as a clawed fist hit where he had just been. Ya didn't think I was just gonna sit around, did you, Keke? Zero Diaz. On each tail a Zero formed with a smaller one forming in front of his mouth. Lines shot from the ones on each tail towards his mouth, making it grow larger and larger in size. Within a second the ones on each tail vanished and Naruto leaned forward, taking the large one in front of him into his mouth, his stomach and throat expanding with the action as he quickly shot forward, landing with nearly no distance between himself and the hyena. His mouth quickly opened and 10 Zero shot out at once in a large spread, ripping limbs from torso. He didn't have any time to rest though, as the gorilla seemed to have recovered. At least that is what the giant purple light flying towards Naruto told him. He blocked again with his tails, feeling searing pain as it started to rip away at his fur and bone. He made a mistake. Though perhaps he would not have been able to dodge in time, he had put himself in a rather bad position to land that attack, his body having been facing away from his first opponent. The Zero died down and Naruto felt his tails ache as the pressure was released. He could spun around and felt the arid air rip into his exposed flesh, his teeth grinding against one another as he focused his gaze fully on the gorilla that was nearly on top of him. Just before it reached him though, it fell face first into the ground. Get him now, Naruto. The fox did not waste the opportunity that Sayel had been able to get him. The parasite had wrapped around the gorilla's leg from under the sand, causing it to trip. Naruto quickly jumped onto its back and opened his mouth wide before snapping down on the back of its neck. He felt the spine snap and the frantic flailing of the gorilla stopped. Naruto gave it a sudden extra twist for good reason. After all, it could just be playing dead. So after another few snaps he let go, his eyes drifting over to Sayel as he felt his tail slowly start to heal. Thanks for that. It was in my best interests. After all, you were stronger than them. Even the gorilla, while he had the brute strength, you would have had him if you were both at 100%. You are much smarter than any other hollow I have come across, which is also the reason why I helped. When you're not stroppy and going into regression, you are actually rather pleasant company. That last bit almost sounded painful. Naruto coughed out, but I feel fine now. I just needed to eat a bit. Though now I know that you were actually able to help out during a fight, so I might expect you to do a little more. Naruto taunted lightly before picking up the bodies of the hollows and dragging them to a large pile. He spared a glance towards Sayel. 2 to 4, my favor. That okay with you? Sayel nodded as 2 bodies were tossed towards him, one being the hyena and the other was one of the ones that Naruto ripped in half with his tails. He watched as Naruto rolled the gorilla over and crushed its throat. Honestly, he was being much too wary with that one. It had died quite some time ago. Do you still got plans to search for this hideout you want to make? With all things considered, I thought it best to ask at this time rather than finding out later. Naruto continued to eat the hollow in front of him for a few moments, mulling the recent events and his previous plans over in his head. I thought I had lost myself. Voices whispering all through my head with hands trying to drag me down. A few more moments and I am not sure I would have come back. I can't really have a hideout or anything of the sorts until we find a source of sustainable food that can keep regression away. That's quite the task. How am I supposed to create something like that? Sayel frowned in thought, his mind drifting off for a few moments as he pictured some rough solutions. Agriculture, Naruto questioned. He saw Sayel look at him in confusion for a few moments. There are small hollow lizards that live in the sand. Not a Justice, not Jillian. It begs the question of what they live on. Then I saw one eating the sand itself. What if we could do something similar with a cow or something from the human world? Maybe some plants as well. A way for them to cultivate Reiruko, which then is transferred to us when we eat them. Sayel pondered the thought for a few moments. And these hollow lizards, they have a Reiatsu. It's tiny, large enough for me to be able to sense it, but not large enough for it to be classed as a meal. A thoughtful look came over his face before one of his tails shot out, digging into the sand before ripping itself up into the air. Screams of panic coming from inside of the tail as it was brought to Naruto, who silenced the small lizard with his razor-like teeth, maybe 30 or so of them to be as filling as a Jillian. And you need at least the worth of 3 to 4 Jillian a day to stop your regression. Though you can stockpile. A sigh escaped the parasite, but it is a start. I can probably work with this. Give me some time and I should have something, so long as you do not mind being the tester that is. I guess I am just lucky that you're too lazy to find someone else to carry you around, Naruto muttered out before letting a yawn out. That's fine. They both understood Naruto's words clearly. He didn't mind testing Sayel's work because he knew that if the man killed him, not only would he be alone, but he would need to hunt his own food once more. For something like that though, I would need a place to work. I cannot simply keep moving day to day if you want any sort of progress with a task like this. A pause happened between the two with only the sound of bones breaking and flesh ripping occurring around them. Sayel watched as the greedy fox lifted its head up to swallow a gullet full before giving its more a light shake from side to side. You want a lab? Naruto questioned, or more like he stated after a few moments. I do indeed. A hum left the fox. Is this lab you're thinking of? How would we go about getting it? Sayel paused in his thoughts. There was once a kingdom where the great hollows of old used to gather. It is possible that we could find something akin to a laboratory there. Or we would have to go to the human realm. The human realm. How would we get there? The air became stagnant. You need to open a portal of sorts to the human world, though I don't have any real limbs to do so. While my tail may be prehensile, I cannot rip the air with it like one would with hands or even claws. I would teach you if I could. So we're hunting relics, or taking a hollow hostage to bring us to the human realm, I take it. Sayel shifted his head to the side in question. We are going after the ancient city if you want this done for you. It would be a good place to set up defenses, not to mention its location will allow you to still hunt for us while I do the research. What do you want to do with those that are following us, Naruto? Those that are following us, they seem to be keeping their distance, but who knows how long that will last. Don't tell me you don't know about them. I felt them the moment I went underground. You are much better at sensing than I, so you must know. Naruto let out a small hum. He spread his senses out wide, judging everything he could. We will continue on. If they start fighting, we will close on them. If not, they will start to starve. Maybe some might even start regressing by the time we reach the pass that is some distance in front. Maybe a few days. You plan to gorge on every hollow that crosses our path between now and then, don't you? Sayel saw the black vulpine lips twist into an almost evil smirk. You can prattle all you like about what I don't know when it comes to Huko Mundo and the life of hollows, but fighting, I am good at fighting. Naruto ripped an arm from one of the bodies with his tails before crushing the bones in his mouth. Here the hunt is just as important as the fighting. When fighting a dangerous creature, you hardly ever try to kill it with the first blow. You bleed it, just like an army. The best way to fight it, is to bleed it first. I shall keep that in mind, though I do not really understand. Though, what makes you think that they will not try to eat? Sayel questioned. It was a fair question that Sayel proposed. Naruto clicked his tongue. They don't know that we can see them. In their position I would try to find a good place, especially seeing as they would have felt that fight from before. There is no doubt in their minds that I am no longer regressing. Thus, a danger. They would want to fight in a place where their numbers are more effective, a place where I cannot simply avoid them. Their goal is likely to be reaching the trench pass without us taking notice of them. Naruto paused and waited for Sayel to give something that looked like a nod before he continued. So if their goal is to go undetected, they have to match our pace. If they go faster we will see them, if they go slow they will lose us. So we slow down and take every meal that passes by, leaving not even bones for them to pick up. We starve them, we put them on edge, that is when they are most likely to make mistakes and when they will be at their weakest. So now, once we finish eating, we are going to take a nice stroll. You want to take a stroll through Huko Mundo? I do, will you join me once dinner is done Sayel? Sayel gave his head a light shake as he started to chuckle. You really are a crazy one, but sure. I'll follow you Naruto. Her eyes scanned the area in front of her, taking in the raised walls on either side as them stretching high into the sky. Her stomach growled as it flopped over onto itself, trying to squeeze every last bit of Ryoshi out that it could. They had been keeping their Ryotsu low so as to not alert those that they were stalking. The fox and that worm. Sayel had joined him for a time. When he got what he wanted he left without a second thought, taking all that he could carry. She was sent with her squad of trackers to bring him back, though they happened to walk in on that fox. It was all she could do to deflect his attack. A few days ago they were about to jump in, having felt his Ryotsu drop to incredibly low levels. Though it quickly shot back up like nothing had happened. They had lost their chance, so she made a quick decision to shift the location of attack to this trench pass. Here they would be able to overpower that fox with their sheer numbers. At least that was the plan. The moment that they followed Sayel and the fox in they lost them. That fox kicked up a dust storm with his tails and the two vanished. She had tried to backtrack only for large rocks to fall from above and block the path. Her lips formed into a thin line. Neliel, what the hell do we do now? She turned her head towards the hollow that called her name only to watch long tails shoot down from directly above them, skewering 9 of her adjusters instantly. Those that remained instantly turned their heads up and saw the fox, his claws dug tightly into the walls above them. Without thought they fired Sero after Sero as he scampered along, even going behind them. Neliel tried to tell them to stop but it was too late. The walls started to shake as large rocks dropped down, squishing even more of them into the ground. Neliel grit her teeth, her eyes locking with the fox who was hanging on the wall. In that single moment she felt fear. Sayel was nothing, smart he was, but he was no fighter. His vulpine lips twisted upwards and Neliel felt something inside of her stir. She was excited. Not going to run this time. His voice purred out, causing her body to shiver. He remembered her, he had known that they had been following him. Had he been moving so slowly because of such a thing? Trying to weaken them as much as possible. Is that why he fought everything that came near him, not letting a single thing move past? She had spent the past few days listening to the other adjusters complain about all the food that this fox was eating. They were all hungry, but fighting would have given away their position, so they were avoiding filling up. His actions, they had been to break their morale. Neliel felt out around her. Sayel was in the walls somewhere, the fox was in front of her and that was it. The fading signatures of her allies were becoming almost too weak to register properly. No. The smell of blood filled the air and Neliel's legs became weak, her head looking towards the ground as the blood pooled at her hooves. She went to drink only to stop as one of the tails moved into her vision. Why are you following us? She understood. Until his questions were answered she was not allowed to eat. Neliel took in a deep breath. My father ordered it. A faint hum came from Naruto as he slowly descended, his paws happy to be back on the ground. Orders, you make it sound like you're a soldier. Though if this man is your father your loyalty more than likely runs further than simple orders. You're coming with us, try not to make me angry. Neliel blinked in shock. There is no real point in that Neliel. When he sets his mind on something, he doesn't really change no matter how much you try, Sayel explained as he came out of the nearby wall. Neliel quickly snapped her gaze to him and growled, now don't be like that, you don't scare me at all compared to Naruto. Sayel, did you get their bodies? Naruto questioned, stretching his body out a little while the parasite nodded as he pulled out 12 bodies that had been battered by large rocks from a nearby hole. Good. A few of them were still alive, though a small Sero to the base of the skull fixed that. You can of course thank me when you are ready. Naruto gave a small grumble before turning to look at the goat. Your name is Neliel, right? He got a small stiff nod from her. That's long, you're now Nel. My name is Naruto, you can eat, I am taking 6, you two can split the rest. Sayel, fill her in on what she needs to know. 6 tails of Naruto shot out and grabbed onto Naruto's meals before the fox started to walk away. You can have some space. Also if you harm Sayel, your father will hear your screams from here. Nell's body stiffened for a moment. She waited until the fox was gone before turning to Sayel. Why I left? Simple, you lot no longer had anything worth me staying around for. This though, Naruto. He is in another league to that pesky little father of yours. Everything that just happened, that was all him. For once, I feel like I can learn so much from someone, though I do also teach him things as well. Nell watched him, trying to get an understanding of what was running through the mind of this creature. One whom was happy to steal knowledge from everyone had suddenly become content to follow this Naruto. To her, it did not make any sense. It was the exact opposite of what should have happened. Sayel should have just drawn what he could from the fox and left. Or was it more that he was unable to comprehend what the fox knew? Now isn't that an interesting look on your face? Sayel's voice snapped her from her thoughts. I know that your father wants to rule Hukomundo. He ignored the shock that came over Nell's features to continue. I want to see just how many hollows will throw their lives away under your father's orders trying to kill Naruto. Naruto will rid Hukomundo of the mindless hollows. They will simply be forced to adapt, to evolve, or they will falter and die. That is, of course, if your father would even be able to make it to Naruto. What do you mean by that? Her voice was slightly shaken. This was expected though. Her father controlled an incredibly large army of hollows. He was known to be incredibly smart. He had passed everything he knew onto her, yet Sayel had tricked them both and Naruto had destroyed her squad twice now without putting forth any real effort. At least that was how it looked. Sayel gave a faint chuckle. I do not understand the complexities of warfare, though your father would not be the only one to hunt us. That would be certain in the months to come. You too. What are you playing at? What is your goal? She pressed rather aggressively. If she could worm information out of them and return to her father, well, it would not be a total loss. The ancient city is our destination, an infinite supply of food for hollows is our goal. Now how small-minded does your father seem? Which is more noble, he whom seeks to provide food, or he whom seeks to conquer with an iron fist? Nell swallowed the spit in her mouth, to the end of regression. Yes, from a hollow that awoke mere moments before your first encounter with him. How young, yet how far has his mind stretched already? Not even I had given the idea serious thought, but Naruto has provided a decent starting point for further expansion. Sayel looked over to where Naruto was, the fox seemingly sleeping now, having already finished eating for the moment. That is the type of hollow that interests me most. A little over a week and he has something that could possibly lead to the end of regression. What could he do in an eternity? The air between them became rather still as Sayel shifted his food around in front of him. Well, you have all the time to experience this for yourself now, so play a nice little hostage and don't cause us trouble. It will be over once we are settled. Oh my, that sounded ominous. He gave a faint chuckle as Nellil shivered. Naruto, who was further down the path, looked at his twitching paws. The blue markings on it had started growing a little further up and it felt different. I don't think I injured them. This weak feeling in them, it is almost like regression. Yet no matter how much I eat, it doesn't change. Damn, this sucks. Another shiver passed through Nellil's body as those chilling blue eyes from the fox loomed over her for a brief second. The way his paws moved, it was almost as if he was stalking something with every step. The sky was nearly completely blocked out now, the moon long hidden by the creeping height of the walls on each side of them. Faint outcrops able to be seen while the dull thin strip of sky was barely visible directly above. It feels close, Naruto spoke, his voice carrying through the still air with little resistance. Sayel gave a faint nod from where he was slithering. I am glad to have you around. Trying to get a gauge on anything in these conditions is nearly impossible for me. And not for the fact that Nell is too scared to attack you from fear that I will rip her head from her body the instant she moves to do so. Nell flinched at the bored tone that Naruto used to rip through the very thoughts that propped up every few hours. My, are you sure we should not add, mind reader, to your list of abilities, Naruto? Black vulpine lips pulled into a thin smirk, perhaps. Though we are being watched, there is a hollow keeping our pace from above. Well, that is not entirely hard. The pace we're moving at is rather slow after all. Nellil's quip earned her chilling eyes focused into a piercing gaze. Yes, let me travel faster so that I can't see what is inside each of those outcrops and we pass by a large amount of hollows waiting for us in ambush. Doesn't that sound like an incredible idea, Sayel? I am sensing that my current health may be dependent on my answer. While I understand that what you're doing takes a great deal of effort, believe me I do, Naruto, your pace has slowed in the past hour. More than what it was originally. Sayel flinched as Naruto's gaze rounded on him, his black lips pursed seemingly in thought. Naruto hadn't thought that he had slowed much. Looking down at his paws, he fought back the urge to grumble at how much they stung. It was as if thousands of needles were being pressed into them each second. I didn't notice. Maybe I started being extra cautious without intention. Naruto went to take another step only for a loud crack to ring out from his body. He bit back the urge to scream as his front paws shifted and broke, again and again to reform into near-human-looking hands, though still covered in his fox fur with his claws in place. Sayel quickly sped up, stopping beside Naruto and taking a quick peek. The new paws with thumbs shifted to hide under Naruto's body. Hey, are you okay? The parasite was confused. He hadn't heard of things like this before. He did have some theories that quickly poured through his head. More important than that right now was Naruto. There was a hollow stalking them, while if it was a Jillian, Sayal had no doubt he could take it himself. But Nellil might attack during that time, he was no match for her. Though with Naruto still around, she wouldn't step out of line due to the fear she had of him. They're a touch sensitive, but not so much that I can't strangle you for talking too much. Naruto picked up a fistful of sand and scattered it out in front of him. I need you to be a bit more alert at the moment, Sayal. It is not only my front paws that hurt. I understand, Naruto, though, and I am loath to correct you, but I believe you meant to say sensitive there. Sayal gave a faint smile as he watched the vulpine lips pull into a smirk. We are ready to move, yes. Naruto rolled his weight around on his shoulders. He took another stride forward and continued at a slightly faster pace. Soon they started to head further down before the sky was blocked completely with a roof of earth. Some kind of bioluminescence was high above them, showing them in a faint blue light. Another hour of walking had them stopped in front of a large gate. Naruto's eyes quickly scanned the area, taking notice of the large amounts of Ryoshi in the air. It quickly whipped past the large stone gate that was bearing them entrance and dashed into two stone statues that stood on either side. Each statue stood as tall as a 3-story building. They ripped blades fitting their size from the walls and held them tight with both hands. Ah, Naruto, I don't know if you've noticed, BU. Yes, we have large statues moving to attack us, the fox retorted blandly. Don't move. Sayal and Nellil froze on the spots, but the statues continued to move. Naruto narrowed his gaze on them. I told you not to move. The stone shook. It went to take another step only to pause as Naruto's tails whipped into the air. Thou shalt not waver, thou blade naught still, till thine tempesters arrives, Naruto muttered out. The statues knelt on either side of Naruto, their heads bowed low. Thine tempesters wisps us from slumber, caught within thine tempesters we shake, we falter, we return. Enter thine tempesters. Stone shifted as the gates ground open. Naruto means maelstrom. Seafaring folk often believe that maelstroms happened during storms or just prior to them. It seems like whoever closed these gates knew I would come here. It is written that the guards will only stop for the tempesters or the storm. With a bad of misguided translation, my name could also be said to mean storm. When was someone last here, Sayal? Be by guesswork, I would have to say at the earliest 400 years. But if that was the case, then woo. A parasite once told me that hollows sometimes exhibit special powers. I can sense things through the air much better and for much further than anyone you have met, so much so that I can make out distant formations that are days away from being able to be seen. Nell here can absorb the energy of others and you can make corpses give birth. Is it that strange that the ability to see the future is one such ability? Naruto's words caused Sayal to pause. It is more than possible. Though does that not beg the question? If they could see the future, what brought their end? I know I don't really have a say in this, but can I just bring up the fact that I really want to leave here, like as soon as possible? Nellil's words seemed to fall on deaf ears as Naruto moved forward into the gates. He paused a little and turned to the stone guards. Qui est in colubrum? Sayal quickly caught up to Naruto and Nellil was not that far behind, her hooves beating against the stone and causing her to flinch each time. Into the belly of the beast then, she muttered out, still not overly fond of the idea of raiding the kingdom of ancient hollows. Sayal though looked towards Naruto when they fell parallel. What did you say to the guards? Let the snake through. Our follower is a snake, though she seems to hold an interest in us, one that is not the need to fight and throw her life away. Naruto gave a small shrug as he reached the top of the steps, a large door creaking open as light flooded his eyes. A beautiful sight of tall buildings carved perfectly and stretching into the sky while water calmly ran down from them filled his eyes for the briefest of moments. That scene was replaced by the reality of what was in front of him. The destruction and erosion of time. Well, let's start searching. This place is pretty damn big, though there is a large amount of Ryoshi everywhere. Yes, it is incredibly dense, so much so that it is unnatural, possibly done on purpose to slow or completely halt the effects of regression. I would be interested to see its source, the scientist muttered to himself. Just remember what I asked you to do. Because even despite this Ryoshi thing of theirs, their civilization still fell. Naruto slapped one of the stones at his feet, watching it skip along the paved path. Stagnation is what turns a predator to prey. Sayal nodded at the sagely words of Naruto while Nellil was still looking around in awe and fear. We really shouldn't be here, not that anyone is listening to me at this point. Why not? The guards let him pass. Is it not his duty to discover what was left behind for him? A new voice called, causing Sayal and Nell to spin around in shock. My name is Cyan Sun, for those that were wondering. The amount of times I have watched those two crush foolish adjusters is uncountable at this point, though they always allowed me to clean up the mess. And now that someone has finally been led inside, you want to see what it was that they were protecting. Naruto mused to himself, just so you know, I have no problem eating you, I don't even need to be hungry, I will consume you just for the sake of it, so don't give me a reason to Cyan. Well, that is more than fair, a faint chuckle left her. Can I bother the other two without drawing your wrath then? Please do. I think I like you, Mr. Fox. It's Naruto, also I'm not a fox. Alright guys, we've reached the end of the video, and the euphoric drug that is Hollows Never Cry. I'm going to try to get the next part out next week, but I ain't making any promise until I get one like in this. Make sure to subscribe to VoiceVerse Productions for more thrilling crossovers and immersive storytelling. And remember to ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest uploads. Until next time, heroes, stay tuned for more excitement and remember, the power of imagination knows no limits. See you in the next chapter.